Perfect. Thanks, Alex. And thanks everyone for taking the time to join us tonight. My name's Dave Barnes. I'm head of discipline at the RFU. I'm going to let the other people introduce themselves in a second. But just while they're doing that, I know we're going to use the Q&A for questions. It's important that we use the Q&A for questions, but there's also a chat button as well. If you've got a chance, just enter your name, club, and then if you want, just a quick short line on what you want out of tonight. If you put that in the chat, and then as we go through in the introductions, we'll see those come up. But just interested to know what people are after tonight. We've got a lot of areas to cover here in the age grade game, and we want to make sure you come away from this knowing a lot more. So, Adrian from Dundee, thanks for being the first in there. And Kath to introduce themselves. So, Ian, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Ian Skillen, and I'm the National Age Grade Discipline Secretary.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kath Bennett. I'm the Safeguarding Case Manager here at the RFU and work extremely closely with David and Ian.
Thank you, Kath. I've seen a lot of people coming in already, a lot of clubs I recognise. I see someone joining. Ian's from Kirby Lonsdale. I see someone from Kirby Lonsdale as well. So we've got a fair range of people from all over the country. Guildfordonians, Burton, Preston. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go through this, so keep putting anything into the chat. And as I say, if you want to ask questions, put them in the Q&A. It's a really useful document and resource for us. If we don't answer your questions tonight, we'll try and circulate a document post-event and pick up on many of the things that we go through. So just in terms of, obviously we've just met Kath and Ian. Ian is ultimately the person responsible for age grade discipline within the game, and he looks after all the CB age grade discipline secretaries. We're going to move to a poll to start with, and thanks for everyone putting their names in. I'm just keen to understand what areas people are coming from. So if you're okay, Alex, can you just stick the poll up? And then we can just ask people to just let us know your role, and I can understand how to tailor this as well.
Thanks, David. So that poll is with you now. I can see people have jumped straight in. So yeah, what role do you currently fulfill? Is it club discipline officer for adult and age grade? Is it discipline officer just for age grade? You're a club safeguarding officer, head of age grade rugby, or minion junior chair, or director of age grade rugby? Is it other club officer? Are you from a constituent body like Yorkshire Rugby Football Union, a teacher or other? Just going to give you final moments to complete that, and we'll just get those results in. If anything that, as David says, you want to put in the chat about what you'd like to get from this evening, then please do. So the majority of people have, so I'm just going to finish that poll now. Last little chance to get in. Okay, and I'm going to end that poll there, and I'll share the results with you. So this evening, the majority of people, David, although we've got a real mix here, are club discipline officers for adult and age grade, actually followed by head of age grade rugby. Then we've got club safeguarding officer and other club officer in there, but we've got some good CB ones with 14%. So a real mix in there, and thanks very much for everybody joining this evening. Back over to you, David.
Thank you, Alex. So just a reminder to put questions in the Q&A. So Kim from Hinckley, we've obviously met on a number of occasions, but Kim, if you want to put your question about VO in the chat, it'll be certainly something that comes up quite regularly, I think, and we obviously have safeguarding on here and discipline. So a good example of what can go in the chat, and we can pick up. In terms of this presentation, there's a page for resources. I'm going to work on the basis these slides will be circulated, so this will be a resource going forward. We sometimes use abbreviations, so there's sort of 6 on there. Probably the most important, if you hear me say CBAGS, that is the CB, so the constituent body age grade discipline secretary. So that's your local county representative, and they're a pivotal part of this. Reg 19 is discipline, Appendix 6 is age grade, and again I'll mention some of these as we go through. And I've seen that question from David Clover about age grade and safeguarding. And Kath, as I say, we'll come to some of these as we go forward. In terms of the agenda, so we're going to bit of an introduction to just discipline in general. We're going to look at age grade specifically, including the process. We're going to talk about alternative sanctions and how in age grade is very different to adult rugby, and we have the ability to be a bit more flexible in what we do and go with an education first approach. Touch very quickly on meaningful sanctions, and if we've got time, section 6, I'll talk about other issues in the age grade game. But if we run out of time, I'll cut those short and they'll come out on the slides. Just a bit of an overview, just very high level on what is discipline in terms of Regulation 19. So Regulation 19 is the RFU's discipline regulation. This covers all our discipline, and we have to take it from World Rugby. So every union, be it New Zealand, Australia, France, have to take the same regulations. The key principles are there. They're there to protect the players. They're there to make sure it's fair. They're there to make sure we deal with things quickly. But most importantly, in some ways, it's to make sure everything's consistent and there's a uniform approach, irrespective of level. So a person playing for a child playing for a school should be treated exactly the same as a person playing for an academy or the person playing for a club. And every fixture, it carries the same weight. We must follow the sanction tables, and Appendix 6 is relevant each grade. And just a reminder that a burden of proof per card is issued. It's for the player, adult or age grade, to prove that the referee was wrong to issue the card. So the burden sits with the player to show it's wrong, and all cases are on the balance of probabilities. And once a card's been issued, no one can play until that case is complete. By the end of the session, I hope that we've been able to go through a process and you'll understand how a sanction works. So I'm just going to run very quickly with what we'll go through and we'll revisit this. But we've got A and other here replaced for rubber duckians under 14s. We're going to look at how we assess entry point. We're going to then look at what mitigation, so what we can take off an entry point of sanction. We'll then quickly cover aggravation in terms of what can go added back onto a sanction, but then ultimately what the final sanction will be. So we're going to work through the process as we go along, and we'll go through it in more detail. I've put the head contact process in there, not because I intend to go through it in any detail, but just as another example of the age grade game is exactly the same as the adult game. The same principles apply, the same structures, and head contacts are measured in exactly the same way, and red cards are given for exactly the same thing. And those of you who watch the games over the last few weeks, there have been some good examples of where a red card is worthy and potentially where it's not. Important that there are some cases which we don't allow a delegated authority for, and we have to be told about. And I'm only going to mention 3 of them. There are a few more than 3, but the 3 main ones are cases involving serious injury. So if you have a player who essentially has a stay in hospital or a broken limb, we would most likely want to know about that centrally, or certainly the CB would want to know about that. Cases involving police investigation. We're seeing much more police activity now in the game. If there is a police case, then we can't move forward, and we need to know about that to reduce any risk of prejudice. And all discrimination cases. We're due to have over 150 discrimination cases this year, and it's important that these are reported directly to the RFU so they can be appropriately investigated. And all these examples can be either reported to your CB or direct to the RFU. And I'm going to send these slides out, and then just a reminder, any discriminatory behaviours need to come to the RFU within 48 hours or through the CB or direct. I'm interested to know whether people know who their CB age grade discipline secretary is. So just interested, yes or no answer. Who knows their CBAGs or the CB age grade discipline secretary, knows who it is and the contact details?
Thanks, David. So that poll is with them now. So people jumping straight in. So who is do you know the name and contact details of your constituent body, age grade discipline secretary. Yeah, so that is sort of like Yorkshire Rugby Football Union, Staffordshire Rugby Football Union, etc., North Midlands, across the country. Do you know who that is? Last little chance to give your answer. And I'm going to finish that poll now. So positively, David, 77%, but we do have 23% that don't know that. So it's a good thing for us to cover this evening, David.
Sure, thank you, Alex. So the CBAG, so the CB age grade discipline secretary, is crucial to all of this process, and clearly we need to do some work to help everyone understand who that is, and that's something that Ian and I will take away, and how we help with that. You're going to hear from me a fair bit tonight, certainly for the first couple of sections. There are bonus points if anyone can spot any spelling mistakes. They're obviously in there on purpose. But then you'll hear from Ian and potentially Kath as well. So in terms of the discipline process itself for the age grade players, it's slightly different to the adult in that we allow clubs, schools, academies to hear the cases. So it's a child-centric approach. We understand that these are children, and it's very unlikely a formal hearing will be called. So we want the club to deal with these cases where possible. For under 12s and below, there is no formal discipline structure in place. So we're looking for the coach, that is the person who knows the player best, to deal with the sanction. And that can be a sanction. It doesn't mean there's no sanction, but it's an education first done by the coach involved. And as I say, no set sanction table for those players. We will adapt the discipline process, as I said, is adapted, it's child friendly, and whilst you won't have cross examinations at club level, even at RFU level, we won't allow cross examinations. They'll be made sure it's child centric throughout the whole approach. But this doesn't mean that cases should be ignored or referees should be ignored. And there are times when a player might want to contest a card, and it might be appropriate for a witness to be called. For example, a referee, should that be match official abuse or something like that. We will not publish decisions in relation to age grade cases. We have a position that age grade cases will not be published in any format. We will tell people that the case has been heard and an appropriate sanction has been given. But as we go through, you'll see that the sanction rates are different to the adults, and sometimes there's an expectation of an adult sanction, which is just not the case. So we've taken the view that for safeguarding and to confidentiality for the children, that we will not publish any details in relation to age grade cases. There should be no financial penalties or costs for age grade cases. For adults, there's admin charges. These don't apply for the age grade, with the exception of citing, which I'll come to later. And the important piece to remember is that all cases must be reported back to the CB or to Ian if they're serious within 48 hours. And we'll go through that in the process. And a bit unlike, well, very unlike the adult game, if the club come to a decision, let's say the club bans someone for 2 matches, and the CB or Ian feel that that's totally disproportionate in terms of it's too low or even too high, Ian or the CB age grade secretary can amend that sanction. The club, if they don't agree, we can go to a hearing, but ultimately we hope to get to the right place for the child. So there's a process of ratifying sanctions, as it were. And it's very exceptional that RFU panels will be formed. We did form one a couple of weeks ago for a serious injury case, but they're very low in terms of how many we'll do, and we hope not to use these. And we hope sessions like tonight will help clubs understand what they should do and what they need to do, and we can allow cases to be held within the club environment. I'll come back to this, but what I wanted to show with this slide is the responsibility for the hearing. So in a school, it's the head teacher or the person they appoint who should be responsible for the hearing. In the club, it's the club discipline officer. I think the really important part to this is the sanction table. So the sanction table is exactly the same, be it an academy player, a representative match, a school match, or a club match. They're all the same. Different people will hear them, but they all need to report back to either the CB or to Ian himself. As an example of the difference in sanctions, sorry, it's not a great slide, this, it's a bit blurred. 913 is high tackle for an adult, and we see it's 2, 6, 10, depending on entry point. For the age grade, for exactly the same offence, if you look at under 16, it's 1 match, 2 match, 4 matches, so considerably less. And for the under 17, under 18, it's 2, 6, 8. So the top end is lower. And there's a regulation that sits in there that the playing suspension should not be so severe as to discourage age grade players from continuing the game. It's about keeping people in the game, suitably sanctioning, but keeping people in the game. And the sanction will normally be less than an adult. So we don't simply transfer the sanctions for adults across. It's much lower. And again, it's tiered under 16s or under 18s. In terms of some stats from the game, this is from 24-25. So we know that, and this table's almost identical to adults. Strike, punch is by far the biggest offence, 32% in the age grade game. Verbal abuse of a match official is second, and I won't touch too much on match official abuse, but you can see that when we add all the different types of match official abuse, it's actually 21%, which is a huge amount. 1 in 5 cases is match official abuse, a massive issue within our game, players and spectators, and something we do need to focus on going forward. But the other offences are, as I say, are typical to the adult game as well. Most of our cases come from clubs, 90%, and then 10% made up from schools, colleges, or academies. Referee societies, as you'd expect, are responsible for the majority of cards. 20% come from club coaches. It's important to note that club coaches can still issue a red card in exactly the same way as a society referee, and they'll be dealt with in exactly the same way. And very similar to adult players, if a card is issued, then it's very likely that it will be upheld. 4% just being dismissed. I think there's 3% who we didn't have the records for, but 93% are upheld. So if people get a red card, and it goes back to that burden of proof piece, it's for the player to show it was wrong. I'm just going to pause very briefly, where I just have a quick scan of some of the questions. So there's a question here from James that, and I'll just answer verbally and then we'll go through. But if we play one CB, sorry, if you're part of one CB and play in another, do they have different policies? Now, there should be consistency across CBs. The sanction table is the same. Some apply alternative sanctions slightly differently, but ultimately it should be the CB you play in that decide the sanction, and that's the one that you report to. So not the one you play against, the one you play in. In terms of the red card process, we've covered that. Once the card's issued, players can't play, and for under 12s, there is no formal structure. In the under 13s to under 18, so the rest of the age grade, majority of time, as I say, the club will be asked to deal with it, and the report should go to the CB as normal. Once it's all completed, you have 48 hours to let the CB know the outcome, and as I say, there is a right of review there for any sanction. And it should be for the CB to let the school, I think that was a question in the chat, the school know, the club know, and obviously we need the player to let us know that information, and that's captured on the form. If the player wants to challenge the card, that should be reported to the CB before the start of the process, and the CB will decide whether it proceeds or whether it should go to proceeds with the club or should go to the CB. In the majority of cases we'll deal with tonight, it's the player accepting the charge, and we'll move through sanction. It's important just to touch on VO, not so much the use of VO, but we often get showed VO clips and people want to overturn red cards, be it in the adult or the age grade game. It has to be a compelling clip for the red card to be overturned. If the instance not shown on VO, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means there's more weight on the referee's report. So VO is useful, but the resolution is often poor, and it has to be absolutely compelling for a red card to be overturned. In terms of how we're going to go through this, we're going to look at the age grade judgment form that's available, and it will give you a sort of flow and a way to go through the process, which should help moving through the process for red cards. And ultimately, we'll cover the first three sections. I'll cover the first three sections. So how to assess the seriousness, the mitigation, so how much you can take off, what needs to be added on. And then Ian will talk about the alternative or alternate sanctions and the education first approach in the age grade game. But I'm just going to focus on the bits on the left to start with. I obviously won't show a child. So we're going to use an example here of, we're going to call this an under 17 player, sorry, an under 18 player in a match. And it's a bit jerky. Okay, it's very jerky. So we have here a head-on-head contact that has resulted in, sorry, it's been a head-on-head contact that's resulted in a red card. So we've seen it a few times. Hopefully, I apologize. Oh. Sam Graham, no. So, and the reason for showing this is not so much to go through the head contact process. It's just to show this is an example. So you're presented with a situation in an age grade game where you've got a red card for this incident. Now, we're going to use the age grade judgment form. The age grade judgment form is available on the links. And the first couple of sections are pretty straightforward. They're just for information. But for this scenario, we're going to work on the basis that the player accepts the red card, so we can hear the case. We don't need to talk to the CB. The player apologizes as he left the field to a red card. He doesn't have a previous disciplinary record, and the other player was not injured and finished the game. So that's the principles we'll work to in this scenario. And then the first is how we assess entry point. So if you remember, there's a low, a mid, and a top end entry point. Now, there's lots of boxes on the left-hand side, but what we're going to go through here is essentially the most important ones that you need to understand. The first one is it intentional or is it reckless? So in order to do it, it was an accident. Now, in rugby language, we use the word reckless. So unless there was nothing else that could possibly be done, it would be deemed reckless. So in the case that the player came across, there was absolutely no suggestion that he meant to hit the other player in the head, and therefore it was reckless. It certainly wasn't intentional, but it was reckless, and that's how we'll forward. The other points that we will want to assess of those 12 on the left-hand side are essentially the main points are, what are the nature of the actions? You know, is this someone running 20 yards to punch someone? Or in this case, is it a tackle that's technically wrong that's resulted in head contact? How did obviously if it's the more if I call it malicious it is, the higher potentially going to look at an entry point. The injury is very important here. If there is an injury, then it's likely to be a higher entry point. The vulnerability of the victim. Maybe a tackle isn't great for vulnerability, but you know, a player lying on the floor who is stamped on or kicked and is looking the other way, it might, if we feel is especially vulnerable, it might increase the entry point, or if it's premeditated, that will again push the entry point up. In this case, it's reasonably straightforward, but it is important also to recognise that self-defence in rugby is not a defence in terms of it will not result in zero sanction like the criminal process. It can be considered, but it would be very unlikely, adult or age grade, to result in no sanction. And then there are certain sanctions that are mandatory mid-range. So head-on-head contact is mandatory. So in this case, wasn't you possibly a sanction because it was reckless and there was no injury, but the World Rugby dictate we must go mid-range. So we're going to work on this 18-year-old. And just a reminder, it's 2, 6, 8 for the sanction entry points. You can't move between them, they're fixed. So we know it's a mid-range mandatory. We can't go lower. It's certainly not higher. There's no injury and it's not intentional. So we assess the injury points, and just as a very clear diagram, we've gone in the mid-range, and they're the key points we've addressed. There's head contact, hence mid-range. It's reckless, not intentional. The player wasn't injured. Then we move on to mitigation, which is essentially what we take off the sanction. Maximum of 50% can be taken off. And again, there's 6 boxes on the left, but the key ones for us are: do they accept foul play? So have they pled guilty? Do they have any previous? And did they apologize? In this scenario, if you remember at the start, we said they apologized on the field, they accepted the red card, and they don't have any previous. So this person will be entitled to 50% of his sanction to be removed, her sanction to be removed. Therefore, we have, as I say, the boxes, if you want to look at it that way. So the maximum of 50% can be applied. So we're 6, and now we're down to 3. The third section is aggravating. So what do we add on? This applies again in every case. It's pretty unusual, adult or age grade, for aggravating factors to be included. There are certain match official abuses, mandatory aggravated, but in the age grade game, we're looking for, is this a multiple offender? Has this person got lots of history in the game as a committing foul play? Have the RFU issued a direction you must add sanctions? Or are there other factors? So have they come along to the hearing and behaved extremely poorly? Potentially you could increase the sanction. But most of the time, there won't be an additional sanction, and therefore there'll be no added sanction there at all. The ultimate result is, in this example, we started at 6, we reduced 3, and we have no aggravation. So we have a final sanction of 3 matches. And if you look at that right-hand side, so we have a club game on the 29th. This is a child, so we work in matches, so they can take up to 2 matches. So we have a school game on the 2nd, and then we have another club game the following weekend. So the sanction would be served after the game on the 7th against Twickenham. That's a sort of, I'm going to pause while I just sort of look at the messages. That's a bit of an introduction to the sanctioning process broken down. There's a question there about appealing a card that's come into the chat, and I'll type an answer up, but I'll answer it now. In terms of appealing a card, so you must let the CB know that you are wanting to challenge that card. So, for example, Ian might briefly mention this when he speaks, but the referee might need to give evidence, and the CB might direct that there's a hearing, or they could direct how it takes place. So you can challenge a card, but you need to do that through the CB. And if the process isn't followed properly, then the CB could decide that the case needs to be reheard or to be done properly. I'll answer some questions as we go through it. There's another question on VO in there, and I'll answer it, a little bit of it. Can VO recordings be used as a citing tool? Yes, absolutely. VO can be used as a citing tool. Citings are just for red card events, so only cite things that you believe are a red card, and it's the responsibility of the club bringing the citing to show that it's a red card. So essentially, they have to prosecute or present the case, but it can be used to do that, and same as adult or age grade. And I might ask Kath to talk a little bit about consent for VO. And Kath, I might come to you in a couple of sections just to talk about VO specifically, if that's okay. I'm going to talk about that fourth section, which is probably the most interesting section in terms of age grade. We have a alternative sanction approach, or alternate sanction, and I'm going to pass to Ian, but I'll just give a bit of background to where this came from. We spoke to our colleagues in New Zealand, and it was a trial that they had put in place in Christchurch, where they found that if they did an education first approach to sanctions, not only did they see a huge reduction in reoffending rates, they saw that obviously improved players understood what they'd done wrong. And there was a additional benefit that they didn't expect, that they saw a closer or a greater retention rate for those players who had received alternative sanctions, and they tended to stay within the club, and they tended to have closer links. Some of the alternate sanctions work with the adult sections of the club, or involving coaches from the adult sections, and they tended to work to keep people more involved in the club. So it's something we introduced a few years ago on a very limited basis. It's now available in every constituent body across England, and it's unique, as far as I'm aware, to ourselves. And I'm going to pass to Ian now, who will cover a bit on what it is, how you apply it, and then I'll answer some questions as we go through as well. So Ian, if you're happy, I'll pass to you.
Thanks, David. Well, yes, this was introduced across England about 4 years ago. We started looking into it, and over the subsequent 3 years, we've spread it right around the country. Now, all parts of England have alternative sanctions available. So it went nationwide last season, and we've had a very good response. It's been very well received. Now, the overriding principle, David, which I think is on the slide, is that it should be child-centric, and we're hoping to change behaviour and reduce the chance of reoffending. So all cases that relate to acts that have caused serious injury or are under police investigation or are related to any form of verbal abuse must be referred to myself. So these serious cases, if you like, they aren't available to receive alternative sanctions. They proceed as normal and they come through to me. Where we've listened to a case and decided that the sanction, what to give following consideration of mitigating and aggravating factors, if the sanction in the age grade game is at least 2 matches, well, we can then reduce it by a further 50% of that sanction, and that is postponed or suspended for a period of time so that we can put in place an alternative sanction. So we've got to have 2 matches available so that we can suspend 50% and bring in an alternative sanction. For the avoidance of doubt, it is not possible, except with written permission from myself or David, for any sanction not to include at least a ban for 1 meaningful match. So whatever the sanction, there's always going to be 1 match that's going to be missed by the player. And all of these judgments that include alternative sanctions, David's been through, the aggravation, the mitigation and so on. And on the age grade judgment form, there is a section that needs to be filled in should there be an alternative sanction. And that has to be recorded on the age grade judgment form. And that we will check is completed in the time that's been allocated. So an alternative sanction isn't simply an easy option. It's got to be proportionate to the level of offending and must be completed by a particular date that is set by the CBAGs and the club so that they can monitor the amount of time that it takes to complete the alternative sanction. So again, it's a serious thing that we're doing here. It's not a soft option. Failure to complete any alternative sanction can result in the sanction being activated or reactivated. So if it was 4 down to 2 and the sanction wasn't completed in the appropriate time, then we'll go back to the 4 matches suspension. And if we find that it's difficult, then further disciplinary charges can be brought in. And it might sound complicated, but hopefully this slide will show you it more simply put forward. So there we are. If you look to the right-hand side, if the sanction from Appendix 6 is 8 matches and the normal mitigation is available, and we take 50% off, then we're down to 4 matches. So that would be the sanction in old money previously. Now, what we can do further now is to bring a 50% alternative sanction in, which is equivalent to 2 matches. So the player that has been sanctioned will miss 2 matches, and they will do an alternative sanction that is equivalent to these 2 matches. And on the left-hand side are 1 or 2 examples, just briefly put here to give you an idea. Seabags will advise on this. Clubs come up with innovative ideas as well, but these include things like sessions on tackle technique, perhaps with the first team coach. If it's referee situations, possibly assisting an assistant referee on a match day, perhaps giving a game's value presentation. Letters of apology might be included, and maybe the development of a training drill. Now, that isn't just those things as a simple, easy exercise. It can be a combination of many of those. And I have found that some clubs have come back to me and said that giving a presentation to their teammates is one of the worst things they're asked to do, and is certainly worth more than missing 1 game for some of them, because it takes a lot of guts to get up in front of your team and do presentations. And here are a few more case studies. A player must not verbally abuse a match official. So the entry point was 4 matches. The mitigation was given. He had denied the offence, but he admitted swearing in the sequence to events leading up to the card. So due to the sincere apology, he got the full 50% mitigation. The non-playing sanction, or the alternative sanction, a further match reduction was made as long as the player acted as an assistant judge in a school game whilst serving his ban. This was seen as an opportunity for him to understand the role of the referee. So the sanction was 1 match. So the 4 went down to 2, and then the 2 was divided into 50% and 50%. So 1 match missed and 1 match alternative sanction. Here are some more for you to go through. Lots of examples here. But if we just look at the one, perhaps second from the bottom, various alternative sanctions were described when a referee disrespect case came forward. And these included attending courses and running the line to assist an experienced referee. An example of a player being coached and then being given the whistle to referee part of a practice match proved very effective. And what you're seeing here is just a few examples. And are these worth, an extra match taken off the suspension? The player may get a lot more value out of that particular sanction than actually just missing a match of rugby, and will be a better player on returning to the game. So here we are. A maximum of 50% of the sanction can be replaced by an alternative sanction. At least 1 match ban must remain, must always be a ban unless it's agreed by myself. The element of alternative sanction is suspended and not removed, and there must be a set date by which the alternative sanction must be completed, or the sanction will be reactivated. And sanctions must have relevance to the offending. So, if it's tackle issues and we put a coaching course in to improve the tackle technique, etc., what it isn't about is getting someone to clean the changing rooms and just generally help around the club. It's more sanction based than that. And we go on to, sorry, David, do you want to go on to meaningful sanctions now? If I just pause there. So we go on to meaningful sanctions then. So if you could move that up, David. Plain suspension should not normally be so severe as to discourage players from continuing to play the game. David went through this earlier. And they should be tiered in their severity based on their age, responsibility, and culpability. They should normally be less than adults receive and should be given in matches, notice, matches rather than weeks, due to the more complex playing programs in age grade rugby. For example, they may play Wednesdays, they may play Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons and so on. So it's more complicated in the age grade game. The player is banned from all matches, irrespective of environment or importance. It could be a county match, perhaps an academy match, a school match, or a club match. So it counts for all matches. And where I mentioned the fact that some players perhaps play a lot of rugby in a week, which we would look into, however, but up to 2 matches a week can be taken into consideration for the sanction. So no more than 2 matches per week. And the burden sits with the player to satisfy that they would have played in those matches. And a non-match week, in other words, if they don't have a game on the weekend, that doesn't count as a meaningful sanction. So that week doesn't count. It's the number of matches missed.
Thank you, Ian. I'm going to go on to some further discipline matters. Some of these touch on adults as well as age grade. I'm going to bring Kath in just to talk about VO briefly. There's been a few questions on VO. Kath, do you just want to pick up on VO, the permissions, and how we see VO in the game and how it can be used?
Yes, certainly. Thanks, David. We are very conscious about some of the issues or concerns that have arisen over the seasons about VEO. We are at the moment just finishing off some draft guidance for use of VEO in age grade rugby. What we've got to remember that VEO or similar recordings can be a really positive tool for training and development of our age grade players, especially when used sensitively and positively. So the guidance that we're bringing out is based around safeguarding and data protection as primary considerations. And we've also got an input from our coach and development team about positive feedback when using VEO. So I'm not going to go into great detail tonight, but just to kind of give you the headlines. Now, when clubs are using VEO, you are looking after people's data. So you do need to take into consideration data protection. So the way you store and you share the videos. In regard to parental notification and consent, we will be advising that at the start of each season, all clubs should inform parents and guardians in writing that VEO or other video recording equipment will be used by the club and likely to be used by opposition clubs at any fixtures or festivals. We're in the year 2025, coming into 26, and we have to accept that video recording and also the use of handheld devices by spectators is now the norm, and it is time to manage that. Parents or guardians need to have the opportunity to withhold or withdraw consent at any time, and valid objections must be respected and documented. We will be advising that when clubs meet for fixtures or training or festivals, that the club who is objecting makes that objection well in advance of the event, so that their objection can be considered. We will be stating that any child who is subject of a court order which restricts photography or filming of a child must be addressed before the event. So the club objecting must address that before the event. And all clubs must ensure that no player who is subject to a court order is recorded by any equipment. And that includes informing your spectators about use of their handheld devices. Very difficult, I understand that, but if you've got a court order saying that a child shouldn't be photographed or filmed, then we need to abide by that. We are very much aware that sometimes there's misuse of VEO footage. Clubs will share that amongst parents, they'll share it amongst players. It's then edited and it can be used to humiliate either individual players or opposition teams, and that's not the spirit that we want VEO to be used. So that then comes down again to your data protection and how you store and how you share the videos. There's also we'll also hopefully will be adding some, as I said earlier, from our coach developers about the use of video as a powerful tool in coaching and the positive feedback. And as I said, it shouldn't be used by anyone to humiliate or undermine players in the sport. So that is just a quick overview of it. We are very conscious that the game wants this guidance. So please bear with us, and hopefully we will get that out well before Christmas.
Thank you, Kath. I'm going to move on. I'm probably not going to cover all these sections now. So there's 6 areas here that I have available to talk through. If I don't get through them, and I'll probably finish just after 10 to, so in about 5 or 6 minutes to answer some questions. We will come back to them. I might be able to race through a couple reasonably quickly. So people have asked about citing. So citing is the process if a red card's missed, and a club can bring a citing. I covered it briefly. I think the key part to remember here is there is a strict 7-day time limit, exactly the same as adults. If the citing is not issued to the CB within 7 days, then it can't go forward. This is to ensure that everyone knows where they stand and that the people get these in within time. It's important to know that if 2 clubs, which is not uncommon in the age grade game, but if 2 clubs have an informal arrangement where they ask the other club to take action voluntarily, if the club don't take action and it goes past 7 days, the citing can't be suddenly started. So be aware of that when you're asking clubs to consider informal action. The window is fixed at 7 days. The difference with citing is the player can play until the case is heard. And there is a cost potentially to bringing that, which is refunded if successful.
Can I just come in there, Dave, in relation to the citing? Is that safeguarding team often get referrals from club safeguarding officers about foul play at age grade matches, about one player committing foul play, physical abuse against another player, and it's been sent to us as the safeguarding team, which is fine because we'll refer it on. But there doesn't seem to be at times any liaison by the club safeguarding officer with the club discipline. So CSOs and club disciplines, when you're on this call, make sure that you're talking to each other and make sure that you understand each other's responsibilities. This is something that we go over quite a lot. And we appreciate that there's always new volunteers coming into the game, but it's something, when we've got strict time limits, that we need to be on top of.
Thank you, Kath. There's a provision in for match abandonment that I think people need to be aware of. It's a slightly different grade game. Sorry, to the adult game. If a match is abandoned by the referee, then it is likely that Ian will be on the phone to the CB, and the CB will stand both teams down from playing into any matches whilst the investigation's ongoing. So that's something that's specific to the age grade game, where we see, for example, lots of players running from both sides to sort this out, and due to the fact it's obviously a serious incident, the referee has abandoned the match as a result of the foul play, that both teams can be suspended from playing while that investigation takes place. I'm not going to touch too much on mandated education. It's the same as adults. We have the ability to put in place education irrespective of any fine. So this is separate to the alternative sanction. If we get a complaint, for example, about behaviour and we feel a game values needs to be delivered at the club, we can issue that and try and re-educate and help clubs and players. I've mentioned on police cases that they will cause a pause in the process. We've had some that run for many, many months. And we've actually, on the back of that, again, different to adults, If it's a serious offence, Ian can look at allowing a player back after a period of 6 months, which is a huge amount of time in the age grade game. But we were seeing some cases, I think even 2 years, sometimes we were waiting. So we do have a provision in there to allow people to start playing again if appropriate and if agreed by Ian. But if you have a police case, the chances are we'll be speaking to you anyway. This one's gone in the chat actually. So bad disciplinary record. It's just a reminder that the age grade cases do contribute to a club's bad disciplinary record. And if a club has a bad disciplinary record, there is a possibility of a points deduction against the first team. This is done on purpose in terms of linking the club together. We're strong believers in a whole club approach, and that all sections of the club should understand the importance of, in this case, discipline and upholding standards. And we want everyone to be clear that they all contribute to the club. So just a reminder that age grade cases do contribute to a club's bad disciplinary record. And in most cases, that's 8 or more sanctions in a season would see a club in front of a disciplinary panel. This isn't so much age grade players, and this is what I'm going to finish on. This is parents at the age grade games, and I put this in just because it is obviously inexplicably linked to the age grade game. We do see parents come on the field or spectators come on the field in age grade matches, and there is an ability for an immediate suspension to go in place for up to 4 weeks while investigation takes place. No parent should enter the field and cause harm to a child or abuse a child, and anyone who does so will most likely be immediately suspended. I appreciate there's different circumstances and scenarios, but as a rule of thumb, if someone comes onto the field without permission, you'll be hearing, they'll hear from the CB. But just to know that is in place while investigation going, and it's been rolled out quite a number of times in the last couple of seasons. And similarly, the club has a responsibility for its spectators. So the spectators may not be members themselves, or different clubs have different policies. But if a group of spectators abuse a referee or behave in a way that cause concern, the club could be ultimately responsible for those people. Again, it's maybe not so much age grade, but it could be linked to the age grade game. And I just wanted to highlight that fact. And there are various forms that will be sent out in terms of interim suspensions. As an example on there, we are aware that this could be a parent who needs to drop the child off, and there's provisions in there for how they can do that while still serving the sanction. And clubs are ultimately responsible for following up on that. I'm bringing the webinar to a close now, and we'll go to some questions. But I just want a final reminder that discrimination cases need to be reported to the RFU within 48 hours, either direct to discipline or through the RFU speak up policy or through the CB. There was a question in the chat around how they're dealt with. Very similar to our sanctions approach with discrimination cases. Each one will be looked at on its merit. But an education first approach, especially in the younger age groups, will often be considered. Obviously, panel hearings can be extremely stressful on people involved, not just the people charged, but also any witnesses in the case. And there may be times when we decide an education first approach is best for those types of cases. That brings this to a close. We've got 5 minutes. There's a number of questions here, which, as I say, we'll answer as we go through. Or sorry, if we don't do tonight and there's only 5 minutes left, we'll put a transcript in. But please keep adding questions if anyone's got any questions. I hope people have found it useful. I'm just going to have a look at this. One of the questions that comes up quite a lot is, do the bans apply to all areas? So absolutely. If you get sent off for a school, if a player gets sent off for a school, then they are banned from the club and school until that sanction completes. And the same for a club, and it doesn't matter if it's the school cup final on the next Wednesday. If the player is banned in the club, they're banned from the school, and should they play, they possibly face further sanction. But it applies to, as I say, academy games, school games, club games. It applies across all areas. what's an adult and what's a child in terms of a 17-year-old or even someone playing out of age grade? How do you sanction them? So if you remember that sanction table, different sanctions for under 16s compared to under 17s, you sanction for the age group that they played in. So um, if you've got a 17-year-old who is playing adult rugby, they're sanctioned as an adult. They've been deemed fit enough, ready enough to play adult rugby, and therefore they'll face adult sanctions. If you've got a 17-year-old playing down into under 16s, they'll be sanctioned as an under 16 player. So it's the match that they played in is the sanction table you apply. And as I say, for 17-year-olds who are playing adult rugby, they've been deemed to be suitable to play adult rugby, and they be sanctioned as adults. Um, in terms of if players move clubs, does anything flag? We obviously we're seeing more multiple registrations now in the age grade game. We would at this stage, obviously it can go into GMS and swap across, but as we move up match cards across all games, we would hope that there's a honesty first approach that it applies to all clubs. And look, should we find someone who plays and tries to get round a sanction, then potentially, well, the player themselves would certainly face a sanction, potentially the club as well, if they knowingly allowed that person to play. There was a question I saw on, as I say, please put some questions in the chat and we can cover these afterwards. But there's a question on double yellow cards. It's a similar principle to the adult. If it's 2 yellow cards, it's most likely sending off sufficient, or at most a 1 match ban if it's 2 foul play. But we'll circulate that as well. A final question to talk about, and I'll hand to Ian if he wants to add anything. A sanction table for parents and spectators. It's reasonably hard to give a sanction table in terms of what actions are taken against a parent for coming onto a field or a spectator. But clearly, if someone makes physical contact with a child, they're looking at an extensive sanction and potentially a referral to other bodies as well. So we don't want people entering the field, and we certainly don't want people making physical contact with children when they come on. I don't know if Kath and Ian have got anything to finish with in the last minute or two.
I've got Alex put it in the chat because I typed it in the wrong space. But remember, clubs, you have a code of conduct. If you want to stop poor touchline behaviour, enforce your code of conduct. You have the power to do so in order to prevent this. So there's lots of tools out there to make sure your parents, spectators, and your coaches are behaving appropriately.
And Ian?
Yes, I think, David, you've mentioned the age grade judgment form, and I think going forward, that's increasingly going to be very much part of age grade discipline for clubs to use as part of their hearings, and that will include alternative sanctions as well. And as we go forward, we're looking to streamline that procedure and make the form available to everybody so it's very easy to use.
Thank you, Ian. And just to sum up, everyone, yeah, so hopefully we've taken you through the age grade process. We've explained how it must be child-centric in how it's applied, how to apply the sanctioning process to pick the entry points, and then ultimately how you can apply for an alternative sanction to offset further elements of the sanction with appropriate other sanction that means an element is suspended until that is completed. So we want to continue this education first approach, and we welcome any thoughts that people have. We appreciate the time you've taken tonight to be on this call. As I say, we'll circulate everything. The video will be online, and thank you for all the work you do, for all the help you do getting people into the game and keeping the game safe and fair for everyone. And thank you for joining us tonight. So thank you very much.